All right, take 3. So folks, you can hear us now, right? Vanessa, can I get a thumbs up? Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so good morning and welcome to 2072 Mediated Materiality and Possible Futures. At Force Space, something happens daily, and that's something, that moment of exchange and connectivity, is directly linked to the research and class activities at Concordia University, which is why we are so pleased to welcome in students from Alice Jarry's Design and Computation Art Seminar on Critical Materiality, who have developed a mini residency here in Force Space, and today will walk us through their projects and facilitate a discussion. And again, we apologize for the late start, a few tech issues, nothing to worry about. Here we are. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to also take this moment to signal a big congratulations and thank you to all of the students who presented their work last week. I can put that link in the chat to the recording, and those who will be presenting today, and of course to your prof, from whom you'll hear very shortly. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to experience your work in 3D and activate Force Space with your projects. Thanks so much for being such a joy to work with. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, all right. So I'd like to begin today's class by acknowledging that Concordia University is situated in occupied Kanien'kehá:ka territory. The Mohawk, as they're known in English, are part of the League of Six Nations, which is a social and political alliance that is anchored in the conceptualization of the harmony of the universe. It is a league of peace dedicated to cooperative social action, mutual assistance, and the elimination of strife and struggle. The waters and land around Tiohtià:ke, so-called Montreal, are part of the larger Kanien'ke territory, which is marked by natural boundaries, such as the St. Lawrence River, the Richelieu River, Lake Champlain, and the Hudson River waterways. This contrasts with the colonial boundaries of the nation-state and the violence they inflict by imposing rigid divisions. These divisions are binaries, and they stem from modern Enlightenment thinking, which are still enacted today. To name but a few, the division between genders, between humans and modern humans, and between the past, the present, and the future. Since we're all gathered here today within a university context, I think it's also important to acknowledge that the university system is at the center stage of these divisions through the promotion of Eurocentric knowledge centered on logic, progress, and linear time. This, in turn, reduces the field of possibility and limits our imagination to capitalist and colonial realities. As Frederick Jameson once said, it is easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. A territorial acknowledgement means nothing if it isn't part of a greater anti-colonial agenda. I understand this statement to act in two ways. First, as a reminder of where we all stand today, and that is our responsibility to care for the lands and waters around us. That these lands and waters are not meant to be pillaged and ravaged, rather they must be protected and regarded as kin, the human as part of its environment and not above it. Secondly, by reciting this territorial acknowledgement, I'm taking responsibility and accountability for my actions, and I acknowledge my privilege as a white settler who directly benefits from the ongoing genocide of Indigenous people. I strongly believe that those in the position have the responsibility to weaponize their privilege with the goal of abolishing the institutions and structures of power that maintain these inequalities. This can take many forms, such as political direct action, fund redistribution, but often starts with educating oneself. I invite you all to learn about the lands and waters where we stand today, to learn the language and pronunciation of the Kanien'kehá:ka, and most importantly, I invite you all to support Indigenous resistance on Kanien'ke territory and all over Turtle Island.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Am I muted? No? Okay. So, good morning again. Welcome to 2072 Mediated Materialities and Possible Futures, a public exhibition and discussion by design and computation art graduate and undergraduate students in the course Critical Materiality. Critical Materiality is an advanced special topic research and studio course that opens up new perspectives and develops joint methodologies between Descartes disciplines, both graduate and undergraduate. With a special emphasis on materials, making, and process, students engage with objects, narratives, visuals, environments, performance, and develop artistic and public responses to social environmental topics linked to materiality and material engagement. This semester, students worked on a series of prototypes exploring the aforementioned topics. As a large part of practice-based research transpires in the form and in the experience of sensory perception, the Critical Mediation series asks, what happens when the studio and its material practices move to public space? How can research creation in the making be communicated and experienced? This activity aims at questioning practice in relation to materials and materiality, objects, technologies, media, and techniques. Students in two groups present their projects and research under beta forms and give a public account of their work and methods. Groups develop feedback loops between the practical and theoretical ideas catalyzed in the seminar. Fundamentally about cooperation, this format aims at renewing the conditions in which creation takes place, is exhibited, and communicated. We will now tour the exhibition, and in about 10 minutes, Katie May Arndt, Violette Arnaud, Frédéric Vigra Bepogano, Claire Dubuis-Rioux, Tom Dolan, Sarah Karimi Nejad, Inès Marmonier, Mala Mohamed Nia, Yishen Wine will introduce their topic.
Do you want guys take both of the mics for the tour so that it won't matter?
What will be the logistics afterward?
We'll just kind of like go from one person.
Okay, we start just so we know where the iPad is. Oh, Katie May. Katie May start?
No, Claire et Violette.
iPad's here.
Okay, great.
All right.
So you want us to keep around?
Yeah.
Projects? Okay.
So for 5-10 minutes, people will just tour the exhibition, and after that, we start with the end corner, the bioplastics.
Okay, great. So just letting you know, those of you on Facebook, we're going to take you around for a few minutes, walk around the space as the students here will be doing, and then we're going to start the kind of formal presentations of each project. So come with us on this little tour. Let's start here, since we're here.
I do have pockets. There's no risk. Oh yeah, that fits. This is on. I don't have any belt, so hopefully that's not the issue. I just need a walking striptease man. Looks great, man. Yeah, you excited? Yeah. You're happy to be the last, or stressed that you're the last? Yeah. It's good. I think it's nice because it's probably the most interactive work, and you need to be, more engaging when you finish the presentations. So, be nice. It looks very clean, very well done. It's design practice.
Yeah.
Who's in design and who's in art? Majority of people are
Design, I think mostly design.
right.
I'm pretty sure everyone, except for some of the undergrads, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think I might be the only one doing like a research creation thing. Oh no, he's in what's his name? He's in QMI as well.
I think he's new,
Oh, you're right.
which is similar.
It's in the
The
tomato.
Master of Design is technically also research creation, but it's like
Yes. Yes.
it's more methodological.
Yeah.
And like I guess a little bit more scientific
Mm-hmm.
meaning.
Yeah. That's interesting. Everything is off right now because we started 8 minutes later. So I'm just gonna wait for the queue of. Mm-hmm. 8h55 pour comme rattraper un peu le temps perdu du départ.
Oui. On est supposé le faire à quelle heure?
8h55.
On le fait quand même faire
C'est ça, c'est bon. On n'a pas besoin de laisser 15 minutes.
Ah non, non,
Ok,
non,
c'est bon.
je pense qu'on est bon.
Ok.
C'est cool, hein? Le projet il est bien.
Il y a quand même une bonne différence entre les deux groupes. Là.
Est-ce que les mêmes propos?
Non, non, du tout,
C'est ça.
puis ça se déploie dans l'espace très différemment aussi.
Ouais.
C'est comme, ouais, je l'ai comme pas remarqué avant de les voir tout un matin,
Ah ouais, hein?
tout le monde ensemble.
Ouais.
C'est vraiment process-based.
Non, c'est ça, c'est vraiment, non, exact, l'exploration matérielle, mais qui est comme de...
Oui, oui, c'est ça. Ça, c'est moins une finalité.
Oui. D'abord, peut-être le projet de Michel.
Ouais.
Ben, tu sais, peut-être pas, parce que je connais toutes les étapes de développement du vidéo, mais il y a une certaine... c'est un peu fini.
Oui. Ouais. On commence avec toi, hein, je pense. On commence avec vous. Oui, vous deux, c'est ça. C'est juste une page de d'intro. Puis après ça, on va pouvoir commencer. Oui, c'est ça.
So should I just bring the iPad next to the first project? You want me to do it?
I'm also going to introduce this person after the break, because then there's a break in between. There's no point in saying next is.
Maybe you can just say that after the break we'll see an
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where do you want to read the abstract?
I think it's nice just
Okay.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can bring it. Okay. Yeah, we can bring it next to the other presenter, and I'll just do the abstract. Okay. We don't need to move it around. So during this seminar, we have invited to explore critical materialities and what possible roles artists and designers have in shaping futurities. Many questions were asked and few were answered, but each of us will leave with a different understanding of the challenges we face today. This morning, we would like to share with you 9 propositions of new way of belonging with the world. We felt it was important first to address where we are physically and the context of our research before we showed you what we investigated during this semester. We organized our cluster around the notion of mediated materiality and futurity. This took as point of departure the 1972 Limits to Growth report developed by Donella Meadows and her interdisciplinary team at MIT. The report was developed using computer modeling to speculate the limits of the Earth's resource in relation to human population, modeling to an industrial production growth rate at the time. What the report concluded was that the limits would be reached somewhere in the subsequent 100 years, or either the planet's resource or civilization were to continue to grow at a high rate. 50 years since the report was published, where are we in this prediction? Our global population has doubled and industrial production has intensified. What will be the situation in another 50 years? 2072 Mediated Materiality and Possible Future is a group reflection on the present ecological moment and a social dream for the future. In this exhibition, we question the place of critical and slow design in resisting the unsustainability of consumerist capitalist culture and dream of new alliances and kinships which promote the new ways to well-being which extend well and beyond the modern human world. The exhibition's disposition is inspired by science and world fairs, which present a constellation of station, put it forth an idea, a suggestion, or new alliance. The scenography was inspired by what was happening in Montreal during the same years as when the report came out. I'm referring here to as Expo 67. The late 60s and early 70s were a time of deconstruction, a time where humanity was beginning to grasp its nefarious impact on Earth and was looking at possible futures can emerge from it. World fairs were traditionally oriented towards the dissemination of knowledge and often were centered around nationalistic discourse and technological optimism. Borrowing the World Fair as a mode of presentation allow us not only to operate a critique of these displays of knowledge and power, but also act as a mean to engage serious proposition. Each of us will not represent a country, but act as part of a united front to expand the notion of community and explore new hopes for a better future. Today's exhibition is structured around 3 axes, which are each comprised of students' presentation, followed by a short discussion and a quick break. The first block, Food Waste and Sustainable Solution, will start with Claire and Violette, who will talk about their Bioplastic Exploration project and how it is anchored around the creation of bioplastic as alternative to textile and plastics. Tom will follow with his project Circle, which follows and explores new way of reintroducing coffee grounds and aluminum from Nespresso pods. I will then conclude the first round of presentation by guiding you through my project La Mer qui meurt and how I collaborated with fish waste from the fishing industry in the creation of bone china. We will wrap it up with a short discussion, followed by reading of a passage from Ursula Le Guin and a short break. Sarah will start the second set, which is articulated around the notion of waste, fashion, and recycling. Her project From Avocado to Earrings explores how avocados and onion waste can be transformed into ornamental objects. Ines will then lead the way with her project A Decline in Fast Fashion, which is anchored in sharing patterns for people who are interested in sewing their own clothes. The group will end with a presentation from Katie May and her project Once Again. Her work attempts to articulate processes to transform and recirculate low-value textile waste as new material. We will then have a short discussion, which will be followed by a break and some allotted time to get to know the video and tactile table at the beginning of the exhibition. The 2 last presentations will explore the notion of social dreaming. Mala will start with her urban biofurniture project, which is a speculative investigation in urban sustainability through the integration of microalgae in furniture. Yishen will end the day by showing us The Bunker House, a video game that uses visual and auditory storytelling to invite participants to an underground home centered around sustainable practices.
So, hi everyone. My name is Claire and this is Violet. We're both undergraduate students in our final year in the program of design here at Concordia. So our project's title is, our project's title is Bioplastic Exploration. So for those of you who don't know, bioplastic refers to plastic that is made from plant-based and biological matter and instead of petroleum. So we were interested to explore with biomaterial because it's an alternative to plastic and textiles, which have, as we all know, a lot of like really bad consequences to the environment, to our health. And it's also for us like a way to explore just like the vitality of matters and like materials. So that's why we wanted to present with that. So I'll let you talk about.
First, I'm going to ask you to come a little closer, if you don't mind. We have seats here that are made for you to come and join because we're going to have a little activity just after. So you can sit here, over there, or just stand maybe here for those who don't see so much. Following the basic recipe that Claire just explained, we use the compass because you can see that there's like different colors, different textures, different flexibilities, different shapes. So this is mainly due to the use of compost that we used. So basically, we decided to use compost to play with our food waste and change our relationship to waste, as other presenters today also did. And we wanted to like reinvent this relationship because we often tend to associate waste to trash, to something that's pretty disgusting and something that's also useless. So we wanted to change that and incorporate our daily leftovers into our bioplastics. So we used them to create natural dyes. So for example, the basic example is the onion skin, for example, for this one. So we just take the peel of the compost chosen, we boil it and let the water reduce, and then use this water directly with the mixture of the bioplastic. And we can also use the compost directly, for example, this one here, where you just use the entire compost and you add it to the hot bioplastic to change the colors. Yeah, we're gonna do a little activity, I think now, and just for you to see before, this is the texture of the gelatin when we use it with Claire, and here are some examples of the compost and how we transform it, for example, the eggshell into powder, or the skin, the avocado pits, the orange peels, and stuff like that.
And as you can see on the video here, it's something that we did in our kitchen, so it's very accessible. There's like other ways, like more like to like do like bioplastics, like a little more just specific, but like the recipe we use like is really like easy to follow, and so like everyone can do it like as an explorations, and so that's what you can see. So now I'm gonna ask someone to volunteer here just for a little experimentation. Awesome, thank you. All right, so here on this side, if you want to come here, we mix together some like real plastics from like petroleum based and like bioplastics. So we're just like inviting you like to like touch them and trying to like guess which one is which. Some are a bit like, if you go ahead, like don't hesitate to touch them.
Just the first ones here, it's fine.
Yeah,
you don't have to do the whole table.
And some, and let us know what you think each one is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
No,
this one is
bioplastic.
Sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So you can see like the texture, like it's still a bit different. We're still working on it, but like there is some room like for progress and like just like research and like making it better.
I think the main difference is really the shape, because when the bioplastic dries, the water like dries too. Thank you so much. And so we have a texture that's not really, for example, this one is real plastic, and you have something that's like very flat, and it's a difficulty we had with bioplastic, because once it dries, it kind of like shrinks, and you have like so many different textures and like little waves. So that's the difficulty. But something we did to avoid the other difficulties and be more precise is create a data bank of bioplastics. It's right behind you guys. So we like use the same basic recipe with the same amounts of gelatin, glycerin, and water. And what we did was to incorporate different compost to see like what was the impact of the chosen compost or the natural dye that we did to the plastic. And something that we saw when using like the same mold, the same recipe, that the compost had a direct and real impact to the texture, the color, obviously, and also like the flexibility and the resistance of the bioplastic. So we wanted to create this data bank because it was like, it's like our first exploration and introduction to bioplastics. So we just had like a 3 months lab amount of time to do so. So we thought like being more precise from the beginning would allow us to be like more quick, and also to share the research together and share what we found. And to create with this bigger sheets of bioplastics to create like to create alternatives to a plastic that Claire is going to explain.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. So I don't know if you've been able to like touch the bioplastics. Well, I mean, everyone in the class, like we've already been introduced to what it is already. So, and you already know what it is, but like also like talking about textures. So when you'll touch them, you'll see that some of them are like really, really hard. And like some of them are like way more stickier. So like we were like doing a little experiment. Like for example, like this one is like legit like staying on the wall. So it's pretty funny. And this one was like the first experiment I did. And yeah, if you want to go and pass it around, like there was like way more gelatin. No, not enough gelatin in this one. So it's just like, as Violet explained, that's like why we wanted to make this data bank. But yeah, like the other goal of like our project was to try to like find the other alternatives in like another like scape. So we were like really interested in packaging, for example, because like one of the main problems with plastic is that there's so many like things we use it for just like for like really short amount of time period. So when we like go grocery shopping and we buy food, there is so much like plastic that is like going with that. So here, for example, and maybe we'll pass this around, like there were like this example of like trying to experiment with packaging for food. So just because, yeah, we just go it, we open it and we throw it away. So trying to think about this kind of alternative could be interesting. Also, like it could be used like as little container for like maybe more like direct objects, because like also mixing bioplastic with food is maybe not for now the best idea to do so. I wouldn't necessarily eat what's inside the packages for now. And on the bigger scale, yeah, I try to like make a bag as well. Especially now with fashion, sometimes like we don't just use textile within like clothing and things, and like plastic is also something that we can find. And even just thinking about like plastic bags when we go grocery shopping once again. So yeah, and this one was just like, we just like had fun, as you can see with bioplastics. We just like experimented everything we could do. And so sometimes we would do things and be like, okay, how can we use it in a real context? So for example, we were thinking, oh, what about creating a cap for like our bottles, like when we're not finishing them, or I don't know. So just like these are like kind of like room to think about the possibilities and just, yeah, imagination basically. And yeah, Violet also like experimented with making a vest, which is a whole other level. So I'll let you talk about that, like maybe now, because like
Yeah, we wanted to talk about the limits because we had like a lot of fun, but it's an introduction and there's a lot of limits to the use of bioplastic. So for example, the example of the vest was like, it was the first time for us to, it was like the bigger scale we did. And it was also the first time when we mixed different bioplastics together, and we saw that they had like an important impact on each other. They caused like big dehydrations, and the vest like kept shrinking and shrinking. It's been like 3 weeks since it's already dried, but it's like still shrinking and drying even more. And also bioplastics, they are not resistant at all to water and warm temperature. So if you want to take the bag, if you have like sweaty hands, it's gonna melt in your hands. And if you take it outside and it rains, it's just gonna disappear, like there's no more bag. So there's really limits. And also like for the food packaging, it's the same. Like if you manipulate it and you have like sweaty or warm hands, it's gonna melt with the food, so don't try to eat something we put inside. And it can also rot very easily because we must not forget that we use compost, so it's a real limit to the use of bioplastics because it can rot super easily with the time. We try to be like more sanitary by using like tea tree or disinfecting our molds, but I think it's not enough. So this must be changed. And also gelatin is like, it comes from pork, I think it's called, yeah, pork. So, and it's not very cheap also. There's a lot of limits, but all those limits are like an opening for more exploration, for more collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to finish like this presentation like on a bad note, talking just about the limits. We really want to like, this presentation is a way to show just the possibilities. It's like really speculative about like the future, and that's like what our common theme is about today. And so, I mean, like we've only had 3 months to start and exploring with bioplastics. Some people have been like experimenting. I mean, Alice has, and like Vanessa as well was like here on the Zoom, and we've been talking with, and just like there's a lot of like different possibilities, and just like going further, like with enough just resources and time, it's possible to go further and like really use it like in more of like a real context. So that's really what we want to be like sharing today for our project, basically. So
yeah, and we want to continue for sure. Like, it's not because the class is ending that we want to stop. We really like had so much fun. So we are also starting. We tried starting kombucha leather, which is like basically you grow your own bacteria with kombucha. I don't know if you guys know. It's like fermented tree, which contains bacteria. So we're trying to do so and explore a little more. And we did interviews with people that are very familiar with bioplastics and natural dyes that helped us a lot. So we hope we interested you and that you might want to maybe collaborate with us trying bioplastics at home. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you. And
if you have any questions, we're going to do a common discussion with these two other groups. And now we're going to present also the following presenter.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're going to go to Tom Stations, whose project is called Circle. So it focuses on focuses on the way to reintroduce coffee ground into the consumption cycle of coffee. So I'm inviting you all to like go over there and he'll let you know about it more. Thank you.
So for my project, as a product design student, I most of the time when we work on a project, I tend to think about materials in something a bit more secondary, like something that goes after functionality and that we think about at the end process of the whole project. So it was interesting for this one to go with biomaterials because the whole project is based on thinking about materials and what are the possibilities of it and what we can do with it. So biomaterials was something completely new for me. And I decided to focus on coffee ground because it was something that most of people have access to. When you do coffee, most of the time you just throw it away and don't use it. And seeing possibilities with that kind of materials was something that I was really interested in. So for the basis of the biomaterial, as it has been said, the recipes are quite easy. So for mine, I was only using water, so coffee ground, and the two other ingredients that are able to create the materials are glycerol and gelatin. So these are ingredients that you most of the time use for biomaterials. So once I had those four, I basically just tried to experience a bit with the coffee ground and changing the proportion between each ingredient to see the result of it and how it would end up. So here you can see all the different possibilities that you can have with that type of recipe, because you can find many other recipes that include, for example, oil or other ingredients. So the good part of the coffee ground recipe that I found was that it doesn't necessarily rot or anything, because, for example, this one was the oldest one I did, and it's kind of the same as it was 3 months ago. So these are the two best I have because I was researching for something solid and that doesn't really goes too flexible. So if you want to pass it around. So once I had those, I tried to figure out what I could do with them, because most of the time I really like to think a bit also about functionality and find an end solution to it. And the first idea I got was basically just working with the company and the brand that supply the most of the coffee, so which is Nespresso. Because in Europe it's one of the biggest seller of coffee, and they already have something included in their process, which is a sort of circular sustainability. When you consume your coffee, you just buy it, and you can just return it to Nespresso, and they will use the aluminum of the pod to create, to recycle it and create new objects. For example, in Montreal, they worked with Bixi to create some parts of the Bixi's bike with this aluminum. And they also used the coffee ground as a fertilizer. So apart from that, I wanted to include the coffee ground not as a fertilizer, but as an opportunity to create other objects and accessories, because Nespresso also sell many accessories. For example, they have the pods dispenser, and that's what I focused on. And I tried to really go into this easy and playful aspect that it could have. So I ended up with this concept of the pods dispenser, where you could basically just go on the website of Nespresso and go on the page of the circular initiative that they would do, and buy your set of pieces to create your capsule dispenser. And the way it works was basically just working with pieces that could come together that way. And so it doesn't require any glue or anything more than just the biomaterials itself. And so the shape has been quite difficult to do, because as you can see, it has many cuts on each faces. So I tried to do it with the biomaterials, but the problem that I had was that for most of the time it didn't dried enough, so it just broke apart in different pieces. So I really want to work more on this project afterward, to see where I can end up, and see if I can basically just really do it from beginning to the end, and maybe see with Nespresso. That's something I wanted to do, but didn't have much time to contact them to see if I could get in touch with something from communication or packaging and the design part of Nespresso, to see if they would be interested in a project like this one. And so yeah, for the moment, still experiencing and trying to figure out how to make it work. So thank you. And so we'll continue with this idea of biomaterials and creating other stuff with Frederick Project, which is a DNC, and he'll show you how he worked with bone. And yeah, it's just right there.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Yes, this is a bit tight over here. So this is kind of like a tentacule of like a longer project who was interested in looking at the paradigm between the Canadian settler colonial state and how it extracts resources on one hand, and how on the other hand it uses natural symbol to foster identity or create kinship. So I was interested in this tension and the role art and art institution played within this kind of paradigm. This is part of a larger project looking at the fisheries industries in the eastern Quebec, in Gaspésie, and its relationship to tourism through the road trip of the Tour de la Gaspésie. A couple of years ago, they created the cod route, which happened 25 years after the moratorium. So my main inquiry was like, why are we putting forth narrative about fishing when all the fishes are gone? What happens when the fish leave a space and how the narratives are influenced by their absence? So I took as a point of departure artifacts that were used for touristic infrastructure and might have been in contact with cods. I'm referring here to the commemorative plate. So these were artifacts that were given to, and sold to tourists, and that might have been used also for cod production. Funny enough, the earlier pottery were using a technique called bone china. So bone china is semi-translucent. It's a mix of different clay, such as kaolin and bentonite, and the addition of bone ash, which is bone that have been grinded and fired up, the same way that you would produce like a charcoal. This semi-translucent bone was very desirable, and it was a way for the English and Dutch to kind of mimic the expertise of the Chinese, Korean pottery industry. In Canada, most of the bone ash came from the buffalo in the prairies. So as a method of colonization, Canadian independent and hunters were incentivized to kill the buffalo as a way to ground the indigenous population of the prairies. Little side note over that. What I wanted to do was kind of put a different bone into the project, bone ash, coming from bone production, coming from industrial fish production. So in Western countries, we usually only eat the fillet of the fish, leaving the head, the bone, and the gut to go away. So I thought of using all these leftovers in a way to create bone ash. The main question that was important for me is how can I use or how can I collaborate with bone to be a co-creator for this project? So creating kinship and not relying on bone and kind of installing this kind of anthropocentric narrative. So I installed this presentation here, which is similarly of how I would work in my studio. So I'm kind of bringing you into my workspace, showing you how I imagine things and exploring different materialities and ideas and discussion that go through my head. So I created this kind of like mind map over here that kind of presents three areas of my research. It presents the kind of theoretical or conceptual framework behind the research. So I started with industrial cod fishing and industrial tourism. Industrial cod fishing stems from anthropocentrism in a way that we destroy the environment of the fish to nourish the humans. So a clear hierarchy of species over here. Then we have the problem of capitalism through extractive economy and private profit. And then modern ideals of progress, linear timeline, and binaries. All of these create ecological impacts, impact globalization, and the extinction of species. On the bottom, industrial tourism leads to anthropocentric narrative. When I say anthropocentric narrative, I say that when you visit Gaspésie, the stories are woven around the fishermen, around the loss of the jobs, not the disappearance of the cod. So they put forward artifacts and stories that put in a very human-related perspective. Industrial tourism leads to ruined porn as well, which is kind of a style of photography that documents manufactured landscape and again focuses on man narrative instead of more human narrative. And it also creates commodities. These commodities act as mnemonic devices that recalls these capitalist and anthropocentric narratives. And it also produces, well, production practices that aren't sustainable. So we have narratives, non-production practices, the disregard of the more than human, and that's where I think alliance and kin can serve as a way to kind of reclaim some of these narratives and think differently about how we interact with the world. The project itself started with sourcing the material. That's when I realized that it wasn't as easy as I thought to find cod because it is seasonal, which I didn't know until I figured this project. So again, this kind of disconnection between the human and the more than human. There's like 3 separate phases of the project. There's a research phase about the history of bone china to look at from a historical, social, political perspective, which led to kind of the boundaries or the limits or the physical qualities of the artwork. I'm talking here about the circular nature, the white porcelain look I was going for. Then I have to understand the biochemical process that happens in firing. Why is bone china translucent? What does it happen when I play with different stones and different clay, which led to kind of the structural integrities and recipes that I need to develop. These are some examples of different tests that I did using a variety of different clay and bone china that you can see over here. And then I have a couple tests of plates over here. And this is the mold, or what I use to shape the clay. It's made out of plaster, so it dries out the clay, which makes it ready for firing. At the end, the underlying and most important part of the project is developing a hygiene of kinship, what it means to collaborate with matter. In this project specifically, it meant to kind of put myself in the space of the cod as a cod becoming or a cod ash becoming, and follow the cod as an intuition. So when I went through problems, let's say that I had a hard time developing cod that wasn't smelly or that wasn't decomposing, I kind of let it be. That was his thing, that was his way, that was their way of doing their things. I saw what I would consider usually as errors or limits as project as a place for potential growth and discussion and negotiation. So the project itself had a couple of institutional problems or limits, as it is hard to work with biodegradable material within a university context. The material itself degrades quite fast. And because of the high firing of the porcelain, I went through a lot of breakage and stuff. So that's definitely parts I need to resolve on the kind of technical institutional side. But what was really interesting for me is to kind of relinquish total control of the project and to create a bigger space for these agencies to happen. Not for me to grant these agencies, but really to leave space for them to enact their full potential. So I'm still beginning to grasp the reality, and I'd like to develop some sort of techniques or manifesto to tie a hygiene of kinship towards kind of my artistic practice, which is tied on thinking, feeling, and the circulation of poesis, praxis, and techne. And for that, I'd like to bring in a short text from Erin Manning. That delves into the four proposition of research creation. So first, art is understood as a way and is not yet about an object, a form, or a content. Making is a thinking in its own right, and conceptualization of practice in its own right. Research creation is not about objects. It's a mode of activity that is most interesting when it constitutive new processes. This can exist with disciplinary method and institutional structure as well. New process will likely create new forms of knowledge that may have no means of evaluation within current disciplinary knowledge. So it's all about exploring what happens between theory and practice. So, thank you. We're going to have a short discussion, a quick break, and then we'll read a short passage by Ursula Le Guin. When the break is finished, I'll be able to present the next sets of presentator. So maybe we can all kind of move into the larger area.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, everyone's sitting. We can all stand. So, who has questions or comments for the first group of presenters? Okay. Any questions, feedback? Yes, Zara.
First of all, it was really great to hear about your practices. Great job. And I just have one comment for Tom. So while you were explaining that it's really hard to cut the materials because once they're dried, it's so hard, I was thinking that what if you shape the material while it is drying. So you will have a mold, and you will add the material in the mold, and then it dries exactly the same way that you want. So that's you don't need to cut the material so it breaks or anything else. That was just a comment, yeah.
So the problem I had was that the pieces were a bit too wet when I cut them. That's why they got destroyed. But the mold was a good idea. And I was also thinking about what if Nespresso was actually doing it. They production a bit more massive. And thinking about just creating some plates of the materials and cutting them was something I guess they would maybe do, or yeah, doing the molds also is an opportunity for them to do it. So, and that's something I thought about because one of my pieces are a bit folded. So yeah, definitely the mold would be necessary for some of them. So thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, so, oh, yes, please go ahead.
I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but I was very fascinated with the Bone China project. And it's really interesting how you managed to bring that perspective to it. What challenges did you face specifically with sourcing and ethical sourcing, especially because the fish aren't really there anymore? Those.
No, I don't. I don't know where it is. So I tried originally calling in Gaspésie to the fishermen to realize that they only had frozen stock, so only the fillet and the jowls. I ended up working with a local fisherman in Hochelaga who was able to kind of trace back some of the fish. I worked mainly with salmon for this project, and then dehydrated fish pellets for doing the test. One of the issues is that I live with people, so smells became and as long as I kind of saw it as a way of the cod kind of asserting their presence. So I didn't want to fight it. It's just this is going to be smelly, so I kind of shifted to the direct relationship. And in an ideal scenario, I would source it myself, not in terms of fishing it, but working directly through the infrastructure that are already there.
Thanks, David. Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Not really a question, but more of a comment. I just love how experimental you guys were with your materials and how much fun you guys seem to have with it. I just think that's awesome. And I can also just see the possibilities. I whispered to you guys, one of them was sparkling at me from the display, and I was like, these would make awesome tree ornaments. And experimenting with what materials you put in it. I could see some really cool textile designs that you could put in the material. Yeah, I was just really blown away by your creativity. I loved the vest and the pockets on it. It was awesome. And the bag, the tote bag. Yeah, just really cool work. Not really any questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaylee. Any other questions, feedback? Yes, please go ahead, Wilfred.
I was going to continue with Katie's comment. I really like your project. Have you ever tried different traditional indigenous sewing techniques, or will you try later on this project?
To sew the pieces together, it was kind of the last part because it was really the exploration we wanted to focus on and trying a maximum of different compost, I think. At first, we wanted to sew with a sewing machine. It was a little ambitious, to be honest, and it was also, we felt like it was not really in the context of the project. So we thought of just melting bioplastic together again, the little scraps that were left from our bioplastics to then melt a new bioplastic and stick together two dried bioplastics to create the shapes. But no, we didn't focus so much on the sewing and research a lot. We just did it like as we thought of would be the more simple way, and also by like not using any other material, just bioplastic. I don't know if you want to add something.
I mean, yeah, you kind of said it all, but yeah, I think that at first we were like really interested in like trying to like sew it, so like both like with the sewing machine, but also like by hand, but also like even just looking at the texture sometimes of like some like bioplastics, some are not necessarily like sewable in the same way, so like it brings another challenge in some ways because it needs to be the right texture as well. And but yeah, as Violet mentioned, what was like that we kind of decided throughout our process is that it was interesting to just like stay completely with bioplastic, and so that there's no other residual within the product. So that's kind of what we decided to focus on. But for example, with my bag, at some point, like for doing it, I needed my friend's help to do it because we had to hold it very carefully because it's so sensitive to any details. It needs to be well put, and just it dries fast, or if it's too much melted, then it's going to melt what I already have. So it's also very stressful because, for example, we spend so much time already trying to get the right texture for the bag. I mean, and just like the sheets in general. So when like finally assembling is kind of a challenge because it's either work or it can destroy everything in just like a second. So that's something that we also realized, I think, for this project. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, while making the bag, for example, I was, I'm wondering how it would look like if it was sewn, for example, because if it doesn't break with the needle, it can be really interesting as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Any other questions, comments? Yes, go ahead.
What kind of heat mechanisms did you use to heat up the material? And did you find that one of the textures, because you handed around a few different, and one was definitely a lot more rubbery and flexible than the more solid ones, especially the orange one with the eggshell in it. Did you find which of those and which heat method worked better for as a binding mechanism when binding two bioplastics together?
We use the same heat method. It's just a pan, I think it's called, like a basic pan on a basic, the ones we have at home. And they were all kind of heated to the same temperature, like medium heat during like approximately 5 minutes, but it also depends on the quantity you're using. And something we found was also helpful was to, when binding two bioplastics together, was to let the hot melted bioplastic that would link both together, was to let it rest a little and cool down, because when it's too warm, it's just gonna melt the other dried bioplastic. So then nothing works and you have to do it again, and everything is just sticking on your fingers, and there's like no more odd bioplastic left. So yeah, like letting it cool down a little, but it was really an exploration. So I think it's like maybe too early to say that we have like fixed ways of doing. It's like still an exploration of it.
I think we're like.
Yeah, maybe I just have a few comments and perhaps like very, very quick question. And I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but it's for everyone. Something I really appreciated about the three presentation is this question of indexing, cataloging different techniques and processes. I think it's really interesting because it allows for, I would say, serendipitous events to happen. I'm just curious, and maybe this question is for Tom and for Claire and Violette, and I have another question for you, Frederick. This idea of form taking, because you decided, like, of course, working with new materials, it's always this question of discovering the potential of the material first. I'm just curious where you plan to go next in terms of, okay, you did several samples, many, which are all fantastic. And then you decided to go for sewing, assembling, and packaging, not complex, but quite elaborate, the bag, okay, and the Nespresso holder. I'm just curious, like, do you plan to explore other form-taking processes? Thinking about form-taking, say we know that bioplastic can be formed on a shape. And for example, Tom, you took on a very complex challenge of creating this assembly of tiles at the miniature level. I'm just wondering, like, with the materials, with the material knowledge that you gained, do you think that there could be other shapes for these materials? I'm just speculating with you, actually.
Yeah. I get most of the hardest part of using biomaterials is at the very beginning, trying to figure out, for example, the importance of what gelatin does compared to what the glycerol does. And you spend a whole time just trying to understand the proportion and just controlling this proportion to get to what you want is maybe the hardest part. So for me, I'm still in the part where I just was doing different proportion to try to see the result and doing the shape after doing the recipes. So I think that once you get more in touch with the materials and that you know it a bit better, you can maybe think about the shape before thinking about the recipes and controlling the recipes based on the shape you want. And if you want to cut it with plates or doing a mold. And yeah, I think that's just the huge part of just doing experimentation and trying to see what comes up with the materials. So I don't know if you want to add something.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that well, Violet, like she did already like kind of like build some like sorry, not boxes, but like sorry, the containers, sort of like by like transforming the shape, and that's something like, well, we had seen during the workshop in class as well with Vanessa, and that like when we do take the sheet and it's like just one day and it's still like kind of ready to take the shape, it's like really interesting to explore. I think that because personally I was so focused on just like getting the sheets for my bag that I didn't want to, because there has to be like a week waited during each sheet. So I focused mainly on that and like before going for exploring with other shapes. But for example, I did a box and I was realizing that it was with extra sheets and that if I had thought about it before, as Tom explained about the process, is like easier because it's still in some cases flexible, and like once it's dry it becomes really, really hard to work with. And some others I just sometimes maybe neglected it a bit as well and just put some sheets just in some places like that, and it kind of took the shape of the way it was put. And so sometimes it does some crinkles, I don't know how, but just like waves and things like that. And also well, Violet, that's what she did as well. And I think it was in ice, the little ones, which are a bit more not as thin and more like bigger in terms of. I'm having so much blank. Sorry. It's just, but I think that what we realize as well is in terms of like molding, if it's more like bigger in terms of size, it's also harder to dry. And so that's when I think it might be interesting to add other compounds such as eggshells and coffee ground, because it, as like we explained in our presentation, it's it affects a lot the texture of the material, but it's definitely really interesting to explore and for other alternatives and possibilities. Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Maybe a quick question for Frederick. You mentioned in your language, we hear a lot about collaboration, alliances, and kinships. I'm just wondering, like, it works well in language. How does that happen in the studio? Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So let's say that I have something in mind. I want to create a plate that's completely white. And then I do a couple tests and it doesn't come white. Then that's a way for the material to enact agency on the project. I'm not going to bleach it. I'm not going to glaze it. I'm not going to turn it white by adding more clay. I'm just going to leave it as is. It can be on a photograph as well. If I work with different types of like handmade paper, I'd like ideally the photograph to stay on the wall. If it curls, it curls. Yeah. I won't iron it. I won't mount it on something. I'll let the material enact its own space. Yeah. That's kind of two examples of it. But for me, there's a kind of there's a what I have in mind and what possibility can happen. And if the possibility manifests themselves, then I just let it be. I relinquish control on that.
Thanks for this insight. I think it's time for a short break for everyone. Okay.
Yep. We'll be back here at 10, and we'll open with a short reading from Ursula Le Guin.
Thanks again. Bravo tout le monde. Je vais... Yeah. Okay.
I just don't know where I should do it. Should I? Camera and all that has gone to.
Well, where's the camera now? All right, everyone, we'll regroup here for a short reading.
Okay, so is this on? Yeah. Okay. So to further some of the concepts from our work today, we wanted to highlight a key idea from our projects, which is social dreaming. So we wanted to bring forth the notion of giving power to and valuing dreams as positive forces for creating and imagining alternatives. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the introduction of Ursula Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest, which was written in 1972, the same year as the Limits to Growth report, which this exhibition is based upon. So Le Guin's novella is a science fiction story set on the planet Athshi. The Athshians are a peaceful culture that value their dreams, and the dream state is considered equally to the waking one. The story focuses on a military logging colony set up on the planet by people from Earth. The colonists have enslaved the completely peaceful native Athshians and treat them unfairly. So this was based on Le Guin's reaction to the Vietnam War happening at the time of writing. Eventually, one of the natives leads a revolt against the colonists from Earth and succeeds in getting them to leave the planet. However, in the process, their own peaceful culture is introduced to mass violence for the first time. So with that in mind, I'm going to read the introduction by Ursula Le Guin to this book, which is titled Synchronicity Can Happen at Almost Any Time. A few years after the first publication in America of The Word for World is Forest, I had the great pleasure of meeting Dr. Charles Tart, a psychologist well known for his research into and his book on altered states of consciousness. He asked me if I had modeled the Athshians of the story upon the Sonoy people of Malaysia. The who, said I, so he told me about them. The Sonoy are, or were, a people whose culture includes and is indeed substantially based upon a deliberate training and use of the dream. Dr. Tart's book includes a brief article on them by Kilton Stewart. Breakfast in the Sonoy house is like a dream clinic, with the father and the older brothers listening to and analyzing the dreams of all the children. When the Sonoy child reports a falling dream, the adult answers with enthusiasm. That is a wonderful dream, one of the best dreams a person can have. Where did you fall to and what did you discover? The Sonoy dream is meaningful, active, and creative. Adults deliberately go into their dreams to solve problems of interpersonal and intercultural conflict. They come out of their dreams with a new song, tool, dance, and idea. The waking and dreaming states are equally valid, each acting upon the other in complementary fashion. The article implies, by omission rather than direct sentiment, that the men are the great dreamers among the Sonoy. Whether this means that women are socially inferior or that their role, as among the Athshians, is equal and compensatory is not clear. Nor is there any mention of the Sonoy conception of divinity, the numinous, etc. It is merely stated that they do not practice magic, though they are perfectly willing to let neighboring peoples think that they do, as this discourages invasion. They have built a system of interpersonal relationships, which, in the field of psychology, is perhaps on a level with our attainments in such areas as television and nuclear physics. It appears that the Sonoy have not had a war or a murder for several hundred years. There they are, 12,000 of them, farming, hunting, fishing, and dreaming, in the rainforests of the mountains of Malaysia, or there they were in 1935, perhaps. Kilton Stewart's report on them has had no professional sequels that I know of. Were they ever there, and if so, are they still there? In the waking time, I mean, in what we so fantastically call the real world. In the dream time, of course, they are there, and here. I thought I was inventing my own imaginary lot of aliens, and I was only describing the Sonoy. It is not only the Captain Davidsons who can be found in the unconscious if one looks. The quiet people who do not kill each other are there too. It seems that a great deal is there. The things we most fear and therefore deny, the things we need most and therefore deny. I wonder, couldn't we start listening to our dreams and our children's dreams? Where did you fall to, and what did you discover? So that's just a little intro about dreaming, and I thought I would ask if there was anyone who is willing, if anyone remembers a dream from last night or from recently, if there's anything that maybe we could bring up and listen to, if anyone's willing to share, if anyone recalls anything. But if not, we can totally just move forward. Yeah.
I'm actually a person who never remembers her dreams. So when I do, they're usually significant. So I just love that emphasis on dreaming and the line about purposely entering dreams to solve issues. That really resonated. Yeah, I love that quote. I don't really have dreams that I remember clearly, but yeah, that was lovely.
Yes, we'll all gather on here to get into Sarah's project and how she reused, retransformed, rethought onion peel and avocado into functional jewelry.
Hi everyone. The name of my project is From Avocado to Earrings. As you see, my goal to trying to create new objects and ornamental objects from the food waste instead of using plastic materials to using earrings. This project explores how avocados and onion waste can transform into ornamental objects. The project examines how to turn food waste into valuable and useful objects. In fact, the purpose of this exploratory research is to think more about the food waste that we produce every day, to work on it, and to come up with innovative ways to rethink, redesign, and reuse it in the future. My initial research question was prompted by thinking about replacing skins of some fruits as a helpful approach instead of using plastic materials in designing different objects. This brought me to my first research question. How can I design earrings by using the shells of an avocado to avoid the usage of plastic materials in the design and also make it easy to recycle? My project is combination of two sections. First of them is biomaterial, and another one is using the shells of an avocado as a frame for the earrings. At the first, I drew some patterns on the paper, and then trying to create these patterns on the digital format by AutoCAD software, and by laser cutter, I cut these patterns on the avocado shells. But before that, I need the shells of avocado be completely flat. So for doing that, I decided to dry the skin of the avocados between the papers of the books under the heavy pressure to be completely flat to using to cutting by a laser cutter in DigiFab, and then I provide the biomaterial, bioplastic, by gelatin, glycerin, food colors, but in this section I don't use the food color. I use the skin of onion because onion is a bit color, yellow color. So I decided to use just the color of the onion as a food coloring for this project. When melting bioplastic, I pour all of the melted material on the dried shaped of the avocado, and after 24 hour, I again came back to the patterns. I see all of them were dried, and I just this, and I think we can use it as earrings. This is complete. All of these are recyclable and light, and just this. Thank you.
Introduce the next person. You want to introduce the next person? You don't.
Where should we go next?
Okay.
Great.
So we'll follow with Ines, which is going to present her project, A Decline in Fast Fashion, which is anchored in the sharing patterns for people who are interested in sewing their own clothings.
Thank you. So please step into my mini workshop. So my name is Ines and I'm an undergrad and this is my last semester. I'm very excited to show what I've been up to. So as a starting and very much beginning and learning fashion designer, I know that there is very much a lot from fast fashion that goes into waste, and it's one of the very unsustainable industries that we have. So when I wanted to make my own clothes, I did not want to purchase any new materials or textiles, as I already knew there were so many that were already going to waste. So I decided to focus on reusing materials I already had, such as either shirts or pants that I was no longer wearing, or either going to thrift stores and finding different materials that I could get and create patterns from. So here are the clothes that I have made, and I will briefly describe some of them to you. So this, obviously the shirt I did not make, it says Forever 21 on it, but I was no longer using it, and from that I created a shirt. Everything here has a tag to show how the shirt is supposed to look like once it's worn. And then over here, I have my mock-up on how people can create their own clothes, because I want to share what I do for other people to do as well. A lot of things we see from fast fashion, you often see on the street as well. People carry it, and most of the time they're easy to make and replicate. So I wanted to make sure that people have access to that. So after this class, this zine will be accessible. It's just a mini book that has the tags of these shirts along with how people can make them themselves. And over here, I have the textiles I use for some of the shirts as well. And I will not tell you what they are, but if anyone wants to guess what these three are, have a go. But you cannot open them because I will reveal what it is, but almost, kind of. No.
Are you asking for material fiber content, or are you asking for what was the original shape?
The original shape. So they were something that actually my sister would wear and she no longer wanted to. So I, instead of throwing them out, I said, give it to me. I'll use it to have a textile for my sewing projects. Yeah, these are curtains, and then that's how I made this shirt over here, as well as this one and this one. Are there any more guesses? Okay, well, these are pants, like chino pants, I believe. I'll just unfold it. It's quite big and oversized, but that's what helps in having a lot of textile, and definitely going to continue to use them as well. And this over here was made, as I said, out of a curtain, and it's to display how people can replicate clothes that they've bought into shirts that they want to have multiple versions of. Of course. This one was made out of the pants, as well as this one over here. Yeah, so some of them you can't really tell how it looks like on just based on the hangers, so that's why I have tags to display how it's supposed to be worn. So it was a lot of experimenting, because sometimes you buy textile and you're not so sure what to make because it's very limiting as well. So it's a lot of sort of brainstorming about how you want your clothes to look like with the material that you have. And that is all I have. I'm very proud of my work. It's definitely a work in progress and something I want to continue on as well, and continue to source my materials from secondhand clothing. We'll now move on to Katie May to discuss her project.
So just over this way. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Katie May, and I'm in my first year of the Master of Design here at Concordia. So this is my project here. So all semester, in all of my classes, I've been exploring textile waste in different capacities. And for this project, particularly, the research kind of led me in a direction that was quite different from where I started. So I'm going to kind of start with the video here, and then I'll kind of trace the ideas and the materials for how I got there. So this is a Instagram scroll and kind of a document and an archive of the transition from, this is the end of the video, but it'll loop back. So I wanted to start with this idea of fashion and media, and kind of exploring the scroll in relation to the paper that I made. So this is paper made out of recycled textiles. So also kind of this relationship of textile and media here in like an analog form. And then I was interested in that in this digital form. So, so I decided to start in like kind of high fashion with Vogue magazine, and then tracing the different links through designers and photographers and stylists towards textile waste within the platform. So that's kind of where the video leads. And then, as I said, this is recycled textile paper. So that's sort of how I got to that place. So my initial ideas for this project were to explore different sources of local textile waste. So my idea was to start with 3 different sites, one being Concordia's Surface Lab, and then to do walks in the urban landscape and collecting garments, using those to transform in some way. And also I was planning to contact a local recycling facility and try and explore that stream as well. My plans kind of changed as those didn't develop in a way that I was expecting. So I did end up using some materials from the Surface Lab. So that's this cotton muslin here. So that's this sample. And the way I sourced my materials was I ended up doing more of like an autoethnography, I guess, because I do sew a lot and I save all of my scraps. So I have a huge bag at home. So I decided to kind of move into transforming those materials, as the beginning of my semester was kind of like searching for sources. I kind of had to start exploring the materials themselves. So I started by researching into rags and the historical use of rags, which led me to the paper making process. So I've discovered that up until like the late 1800s, paper has been made for a really long time using recycled textiles, which I wasn't really aware of. So until the late 1800s, when there was a switch towards using wood pulp, which is what we use today predominantly, almost all paper was made out of cloth and recycled cloth. So I thought this was really interesting and was also like an interesting difference to today where we have so much waste textile, and that was kind of what I also wanted to show with this scroll. And we're so quick to ship away garments, even just like lightly used garments, and not kind of manage our waste, whereas I was finding research into the mid 1800s when rags were so valuable and they were really precious, and it was actually like illegal to take them out of the country because they were so useful in transmitting news and media through the paper. So I kind of wanted to explore that through the materials. And so I'll walk you like a little bit through the paper making process. So it starts with taking these, so I've had these like smaller sized scraps of fabric, and then to make them into paper, those have to be turned into smaller pieces to become pulp, which is like this form here. And traditionally that would be done with a Hollander beater, which is like an industrial machine that pulps the material for a really long time and creates like a really long, strong fiber by actually like transforming the composition of the cellulose. So I didn't have access to that type of machine, so I did this all by hand, which was basically cutting it into really small pieces and then using a blender to blend those pieces down. So that is why my paper has quite a few like irregularities, because rather than being blended, or rather than being pulped and beaten, it's actually, the fibers are quite shortened and broken down, so it doesn't create like a strong paper. And also my paper is like quite thick. But for the research that I wanted to do and things, I found this process was useful. And I also wanted to explore, so I started with these kind of smaller pieces and exploring different compositions of fibers. So there's different cottons and cotton blends. This one's like a jersey from a t-shirt, and there's like a tensile fiber, which is also a cellulose fiber. And then there's just different compositions to explore the material and the different colors and things. And you're totally welcome to touch things if you want to. And so then I kind of wanted to, so my background is in making textiles and weaving and knitting. So I wanted to explore the materials at a bit of a larger scale to experience them in like a little bit more of a cloth-like form. So that's when I wanted to go to this larger size. And this was, I found a frame, just like an empty picture frame on the street one day, and decided to try and use that. So I built a frame and pulled the sheets out of that. And then this larger sheet here is actually like 4 of these sheets that I placed together. So there's kind of like a seam here when the paper is pulled and it's basically water and it's really wet. You can overlap it and create like a seam. So I placed 4 pieces, and then when it's pressed, it binds and forms the fiber together. So that was kind of my exploration. I would have liked to explore like printing and using the paper as a medium for print, but I didn't quite get there this semester yet. But yeah, I also was interested in seeing the larger piece, like I said, as kind of like a cloth, but I found that actually like the larger that I got, the less cloth-like it became much more papery at the larger size. The smaller pieces are like a lot softer and a little bit more, you can kind of like, I feel like this one still feels like a t-shirt, whereas that feels very much more like paper. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say, but yeah, if you want to touch things or anything, go ahead. And I think that's the end of these 3 presentations. So we're going to do another little like discussion period. So if anyone has any questions, feel free.
Anyone wants to respond to the three presentations that we just saw? Feedback, comments? Yes. Go.
In terms of the clothing one, obviously the way that you're approaching it is very like democratic in a sense. You're giving people the ability to make their own clothes and repurpose their own things. And I'm wondering how something like different body shapes and sizes affected the way that you made this design or the way that you are giving these tools to people.
Yeah, so something that I have yet to work on is sizing for other people as well, since it's experimental and still at the start. They're all according to my measurements. So what I have made so far are based on my body shape, and I do know that that sort of restricts it as well. Hopefully eventually, and maybe at the start of next year, I will know and have practiced more to be able to cater for different sizes, and then I'll add it along to the zine as well to measure, and how people can also make clothes based on their measurements, so how they can just take a measuring tape, measure their proportions, and then adjust it accordingly. But it's definitely something I did not include yet, and I thank you for bringing it up. It is super important.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, Sarah? Oh, I think Kevin had a question also. And sorry for not respecting the order.
I have a question for you, Ketime. I like the link that you did at the beginning between the industrial textile waste and your own experience with the industrial company in Montreal, but also in your process. So I was thinking, do you think it's an avenue for you to explore that link in just to show that in what you did in the samples or your experimentations, this impact of the industrial textile industry?
Sorry, could you repeat the
Yes, I like the link that you did between the industry, the textile waste, and your process, because you have difficulties to contact companies, and do you think that it's because you create a story in your process, between your process and that problem? So do you think that it is something that we can maybe see more in your final project?
To see more of the process?
More of the process, but also more of the problematics of the industrial waste.
To show like maybe more of the waste side of things.
Yeah, but also more about the object is a mediation object. So about the problematic. So it's just. Do you think that it's something that you can explore more? Not thinking about your process like to go to a final project, but more like
within the material.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. So I would like to explore more processes with waste. It's more a matter of getting access to equipment and things where I can process that. So that was something I tried to do this semester as well, but I wasn't quite able to gain access. Like I have a background in weaving, so I really want to try and explore that through weaving more. But I did also do like some felting techniques. So this is like a non-woven, and felting is also like a non-woven process. So that requires a lot less tools and machinery or anything it's mostly labor. So I think that's something that I'll continue to explore in the future for sure throughout the program.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm reading off my phone. I wrote it down. When you're working with smaller versus the larger pieces, you noted the texture difference with the larger pieces being more papery. Do you think that noting this consistency will help you if you consider moving forward with working with it in different ways? And if you want to make different objects with it. For example, textile clothing. Would quilting or other traditional mechanisms like patchwork come into play if you need the texture to not be paper for like a shirt or something? How would that interact with the feasibility of manufacturing? Like, why are you going to make 5,000 small pieces when you could make one big piece? But if you make one big piece, it's going to be a piece of paper and not a fabric like you needed. Have you thought at all about that, or is that just an area to explore?
Yeah, that was definitely something I was working through with this process. So these can be, so like I created that larger sheet, you can do sort of like an overlapping, but I think like to keep them in these small pieces, there could be, like you said, kind of like a patchwork or something, which would still create like the suppleness of the fabric. And then I did want to kind of explore going larger and see if it could be used as a fabric, but I think it's, yeah, like listening to the material and understanding that it is a paper, it's not a fabric. So at the larger scale, it's not really suitable to clothing. So I think I've kind of reached that limitation and would like to explore it, yeah, maybe for printing or maybe for molding or doing like folding or things like that. But yeah, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
So I just have one question for Sarah. So I'm wondering, like, what sort of not problems but obstacles did you face while you were working on this project with the avocado and the bioplastic?
During the process?
Yeah, during the process.
Well, when pour the biomaterial on the pattern, after that, when I was extracted the patterns from the liquid, a bit wet, I have a problem in this section because was really sticky and very hard can extract the patterns from the material. Just this.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Zara. Any other comment, feedback? No? Because I have a few questions. First, I would like to congratulate you, Inez, Katie May, and Sarah for those fantastic projects. Big kudos. A few questions. First for you, Sarah. Why avocado?
To be honest, at the first 2 months ago, I see avocado shells of avocado on the table, and at those moments, I decided to use it. But after that, when I more thought about it, I find that it was the best choice for me for this project because, for example, if I want to extract patterns from the other shells of the fruits, for example, eggs, I couldn't work on it to be flat. But avocado has this ability to be flat under the heavy pressure between the papers of the books and be dried, and it works. But I'm not sure, but it works.
Because maybe sometimes something that could be interesting, and that touch base on the question of locality and circularity and upcycling that Inez and Katie brought forward, is a kind of local food waste can, because if we think about avocados, they don't grow here in Montreal. But we have tons of other stuff like squashes that have peels that could be dried. So maybe that could be a possibility for the future to look in terms of like, what is the local food waste that we have here in Montreal that can be processed a little bit the same way? That could be interesting. It's just an idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think more about it, to finding the local foods and working on them. But just avocado, because it was flexible to working on the shells of it, I decided to choose it. But absolutely thinking about finding the local fruits.
Thanks. Question for Inez. Inez, thank you so much for your project. I'm just curious. You start with rather large pieces of fabric, but the garments are tiny in the end. Are you planning in exploring other forms or other other structures. What are you planning to explore next?
Yes, so one of the purple shirt I made was actually from a blouse and it was quite small. So I did have to figure out how I wanted to assemble my pattern, and that is a problem I had faced because, say for instance, if it's this small, you have to make it so there's also zero waste, which is a sustainable advantage. It was tricky. Of course, there are garments that are potentially smaller, and I do know that, for example, if you go to a thrift store, you don't always find the same items, so it could always turn out to be a different color or a different textile material. But that was the trickiest one I had to do, and most of the time it is small garments you find. So I think if I were to explore that, I would challenge myself to buy smaller garments and figure out how I can manipulate its shape to create clothes.
Thanks. And my last question for Katie May. Katie May, you mentioned that one of your ideas was to transform this into a poster. How do you see that? Because there's always this question, it's always a tension, at least, well, say in my own practice and research, when working with images and content, what image, what content, what do we put out there? Just because there is the material research, is it enough? Do we need to add something on top? So how do you envision that trajectory in your own practice?
Definitely something I'm still figuring out, but I think since I've been kind of made this link towards media, like I am interested in images and the difference of like an image of something, like specifically a garment, or text about describing that garment in relation to like an actual physical garment. So I think exploring like the flatness of the page and kind of like an image of a garment would be an interesting way to explore that relationship. But like what garment and what text is still something that I have to figure out.
Thank you.
All right.
I had a little question from Zoom, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Vanessa.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it was a question for Katie May concerning paper, because usually we make paper out of cellulose, so it means we use mostly cotton, hemp, or linen, for example, or tencel, as you mentioned. But most of the textile waste is a blend of fibers, and mostly 70% is polyester. So I was wondering if you are planning, to explore this side and try to make materials or paper out of these blended fibers or synthetic fibers.
Yeah, can you hear me when I'm speaking? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like that's definitely something I've thought about, but I had to kind of draw limits with working with waste as to like what is manageable, and I feel like working with natural fibers is just, it's something that I'm more interested in personally, but it's also just, I think the processing of synthetic fibers and stuff often kind of comes to, I see a lot of like scientists kind of transforming that in ways that I don't think that I necessarily can. So I think I've kind of decided to draw a boundary on just like working with natural fibers with this waste process.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Vanessa, and for your presence this morning.
My pleasure.
Any more questions before we move on? So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back in the space and we can look through the materiality table at the entrance.
So welcome back, everyone. We'll ask the group to gather around the samples table.
Just a little recap for people on Zoom. I'm just opening up a small video and I'm just inviting people to come and play with the different materialities. And then they're invited to touch and smell and play with them. So the video is just like a small GIF of like different materiality coming from different projects as a way to kind of establish new kind of rhizomatic connections between them. So please come in and touch and feel and smell and think.
For your comments, we did not try because we decided
we're sticking to compost.
Yeah, but there's like one I can show you later.
Oh,
It was just.
Oh no. All right, I'll recap my question. For everyone listening, I guess, I asked about implementing the use of minerals such as quartz shards or mica shards within the bioplastic in order to replicate a glitter-esque, because glitter as a material is has such a harmful impact, both the production of it, the disposal of it, the creation of it, its existence is harmful to the environment. So sustainable options qualified with however sustainable mining minerals is, but options within a bioplastic. I know you focused on compost mainly.
Yeah, we did just focus on compost because we thought it would be like maybe a little too much to explore too far, but thanks for the common question. And I think it would be a great idea to add minerals and maybe finding also alternatives to stuff like glitter and things like that. There's like one bioplastic where the aluminium got stuck to the bioplastic. So if you want to have a look at it, I invite you to do so. But thank you. Does anyone has other questions about the tactile table or comments about stuff they liked about the table or? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting with with everybody's projects was this this question as to how much do you yield to the materials doing their own thing and the shapes that they make, and how much do you push it to fit what you want it to. And I thought that that was really interesting, and everybody's stuff, having the materials have their own agency and speak for themselves as opposed to pushing them further than they need to go. And I think that's a really valuable thing to think about when we are engaging with different kinds of materials in our daily lives and in the objects that we use. Yeah.
Realistically, though, if you need something to perform a function in a socioeconomic mechanism like food packaging, for example, you need what you're producing to perform the function you need it to perform. And even if we're trying to move towards a less consumer packaging system, in the meantime, we can make efforts to be more sustainable. So there's a degree of accepting and respecting the agency of the products that are used, but how do you balance that with actually making it work the thing that it needs to perform the function of?
If I may, I think they kind of go hand in hand. And if you have to readjust your materiality, you have to readjust your expectations. I think if we're talking about like fish, for example, we shouldn't be sending fish abroad for that long. Therefore, we didn't really need to can fish. So they're both kind of two sides of the same question. If we work with bioplastic, instead of producing plastic in China or India or Thailand and shipping it across the world, we could have local bioplastic farms, and then the ecology becomes more circular in a way. So the notion of trade, globalization, and capitalist venture go hand in hand with design and production facilities. These technologies could be implemented, but on such a smaller scale. So I think they're part of like a notion of degrowth in terms of like capitalist economic free trade, whatever you want to call that bullshit. So if we think more local, then we can adjust these technologies that maybe are more or less shelf stable than everything else, right? It's just a proposition. It's not like a finality, obviously. But when you think of things being shelf stable, it's not because they're consumed locally. It's because they have big amount of territory to travel. Shelf stable technology, most of it comes from NASA to bring stuff in space. So we're talking about like, anything from like powdered cheese to, microwave, like all that stuff. There's like a big military industrial complex influence on how we produce and how we consume different things. So I think it's our role as artists and designers to kind of interject and propose new realities and where we can implement these technologies, both in physical space and kind of a mental or spiritual space.
Okay, were there any further questions or anything? So I think we'll move on to Mala's project, which is called Urban Biofurniture and is a speculative investigation in urban sustainability. So we'll just move this way.
Hi everyone, I'm Mahla and thanks for your participating. So I invite you to see my presentation on big screen, please.
Right now, are you ready to change the world? Changing the world is no easy feat, but for us, scientific progress and responsible academic go hand in hand, enabling us to create a sustainable future for everyone. We are curious minds dedicated to human advancement. Our mission is to pursue progress for our urban future and society everywhere. We believe that we can harness science and technology to help tackle many global challenges. Sustainability has therefore been vital to us for many generations. Both climate change and air pollution are worsened by fuel burning, increasing the carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere is closely linked to climate change, especially global warming. Nature provides free assets and ecological services essential for human health and economic activity. For this reason, our ecosystems need to be protected and managed without affecting their integrity in the long run.
It is essential to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in cities to address the problem of global climate change. The absorption of carbon dioxide by vegetation is one of the most critical services provided by the ecosystem, which needs to be preserved over time. Urban Biofurniture project, with the primary purposes of aesthetic and reduce carbon dioxide, believes that for reaching an effect dreaming in urban sustainability, the presence of various green spaces and adequate management is necessary to ensure sustainability for the urban future. In this regard, urban biofurniture emphasizes two issues. First, it emphasizes providing facilities and introduces urban furniture as one of the most critical design aspects affecting urban aesthetic sustainability in social environment. And second, it reminds us, I'm so sorry, I think we have to see the rest of the video. I don't know what's happening. After movie, please. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, second, it reminds us that microalgae as living microorganisms are in the simplest form of vegetation. Due to their high surface volume, these organisms have a very high ability to absorb air pollution. By absorbing carbon dioxide from air or water during photosynthesis, microalgae produce about 60 or 75% of the oxygen needed by humans and animals. Microalgae are 10 times more photosynthesis than adult tree and grasses because urban furniture is requiring surface in contact with polluted air in public spaces. Integrating microalgae in ordering furniture transforms it into health and living urban furniture. And the main design idea for this project is taken from the world of carbon dioxide. As you can see from the top view, it is like C and O, that C is a carbon and O is both treetop plant and a circle of table. And the next is about the design of bioreactors and the place installed of the microalgae in a leaf-shaped framework. And for design feature, we can mention that urban biofurniture is an interaction design between humans, plants, and microalgae. Another is a combination design from two types of organic and regular furniture. Next is some spaces around the table for disabled people that in these parts of the table designed with shape of curve that makes it proper to use for disabled people. And the other is about the design form of fracture created in furniture bottom shows the shape of root, which is associated with the tree's leaves and induce the feeling that it has taken root in the ground and is an integral part of the urban spaces. To integrate microalgae with surfaces, it is necessary to use a glass container to provide growth conditions and with a glass container. And this a glass container called bioreactors. To create an optimal bioreactors, providing system input is necessary to achieve significant output. And I think it's very, very interesting to mention bioreactor can be used as a light source by injecting fluorescent proteins into microalgae cells or adding LED lights to bioreactors. This light source is charged during the day by solar energy from the sun, and during the night you can see the shining microalgae and also the movement of microalgae flow the bioreactors. And besides designed by 3D softwares like 3D Max, Lumion, and Blender, we printed this model with a 3D printer device, and I invite you come here and see my model that I can show you close and speak about that. Yeah, as you can see, this is the model for urban biofurniture, and you can see the framework like leaves, and these tubes are the place that microalgae is flowing on that, and it's the place for trees that grow on that. And besides that, there are some furniture, organic furniture and ordinary furniture, and this shape is like the roots that I mentioned before. And also besides that, at the night it has a shiny perspective. There is a good place to people sit here, and they can be protect about the sun rays, the sun rays, harness sun rays, and it has a place for shadow. Yeah, and it is microalgae, my material that I think about that. And yeah, and all in all, we have to know microalgae as a plant in our environment, and we really don't forget this essential matter for our environment. And at last, thank you very much from dear Professor Alice Jerry.
Changing the
So,
enabling us to create a sustainable future for everyone.
Thank you. Is it, the presentation is finished?
I wanna introduce Yishin.
Thank you, Mala.
So thank you very much for your kind consideration. And now we have my friend Yishin. Yishin will end the day by showing us the Bunker House, a video game that uses visual and auditory storytelling to invite participants to an underground home centered around sustainable practices. Thank you very much.
So, hello everyone. I'm Yi Chen. I'm undergraduate studying computation arts. So this is my still work in progress project, the Bunker House. You may call it a game, but it's a digital fiction. So yeah, it's a digital fiction. So let's talk about a little bit about my process. So at the beginning, I was more interested in technology and its power consumption. And I was imagining a future where fossil fuel and other energy resources are completely depleted by human. And the only way to generate power is to do it yourself. So manually generate electricity by yourself. You know, it was a great idea, and it was actually a very early idea for a short story that I came up with a few years ago. And I thought it could work in this kind of medium. But so yeah, no. I kind of overcomplicated stuff, and I didn't want to waste time thinking too hard, so I had to improvise. So instead of about tech or power consumption or computer, it is now about recycling waste home. And it also gave me an opportunity to examine the materiality and the texture of things around us. You know, things that are so ordinary that we ignore their presence. You know, such as concrete walls, ceramic tiles, ceramic sinks, rusty pipes. You know, this kind of stuff. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to explore the way to recreate those surfaces and textures in a digital world efficiently without using too much memory. So that's basically the premise for this project. So let's talk about 3D production. There are three main attributes to create a material on a computer: color, metallic, and roughness. So color is the base color of the object. Metallic decides how it glows, how is it a metal or is it a non-metal? And roughness decides smoothness of the surface. So is it reflective or is it rough? So you can basically use these three attributes to create almost any materials in real life, but on a computer, of course. And for my workflow, I also add one more texture, which is called normal map. So in short, normal map adds extra details to the object without sacrificing performance. So that's basically my total workflow for almost every single object that I have in the game. And let's see them in practice. So here's the texture work for a bunker door, which I made, and it looks like this. And let's add in the color. I mean, it looks great already. I mean, oh, it gets better. And here's with metallic, and you can see, oh, it looks metal-y. And adding the roughness next, and you know, it's a pretty old rusty door, so it's not gonna be very smooth. And let's add in the normal map, and it's very subtle change, but I hope you can see. So before it looks very flat, and now it looks pretty 3D dimensional, and yeah, and also it has more depth to it. So that's basically what I do for most objects. So yeah, let's dive into it and see the future of housing, bunker house.
Yishan, don't you want the microphone? Okay.
Sorry, technical issues. Oh. Okay, finally, I'm out of that awful apartment. God, Jesus. Okay, let's see, where am I? Okay. You know, the siren is very annoying, you know. I know it's bad, the water level is literally like 10 meters tall. I mean, I'm covered in water. Okay, you know what? I'm done with this, like, all of this. I'm going to find a shelter. Oh, is that underground shelter? Oh, yeah. Oh, that is. Okay, that's, wait a sec, why is so many garbage around? I mean, there's a whole pile of garbage. Like, why? Why would anyone do this? Why would anyone live like this? God, jeez. You know, I'm just gonna leave. You know, this world is, there's no hope for this world. Completely wasted and polluted. I'm going, so I guess this is the bunker house, so I'm going, so goodbye world. Sorry about that, technical issue. Let's speed up. Oh, sorry. Game development is hard, you know. Sorry, I'm just gonna pretend none of that happened, and let's jump to the bunker house. I know you've been, oh. Sorry, last resort.
Maybe you have a few screenshots you can share, or?
I can try something. It will definitely work this time. Okay, wow. That's a long way down. Okay, let's see the bunker house. Oh, okay. In 2018, 0.003% of furniture and furnishings waste is recycled. Wow, that's really insignificant. In 2018, 80% of furniture and furnishings waste is landfill. Wow, it's a lot. And now we are the biggest sector to recycle 80% of waste in landfills. Wow, good for you. Now at Bangladesh, we still value sustainability and recycling. Yeah, I can tell. Bangkok house is furnished with 100% recycled furniture. Wow, that's really impressive. Bangkok house uses 100% recycled construction and demolition debris. Wow, you mean all that is made of recycled materials? Wow, I'm impressed. Bangkok house is the future of housing in the world. Yeah, for sure. Can I get my Bangkok house now? Okay, projects for Bangkok house today only available in limited units. Well, okay, find your Bangkok house today only available in selected city. Oh, come on. I mean, well, I'm not going to complain because I'm already in there because, well, no one's going to stop me to living here. Okay, well, okay. Looks like someone has already lived here for a while. Complete sealed with no window reduces heat dissipation. I'm not sure if it's a good thing, but oh, this person said it's hot as hell, so I guess not a good thing. I mean, no windows, seriously? I mean, wow, look at this, all these drawings and pictures and newspapers, the daily news. Something trail flooded, uninhabitable. I have no idea what that place is because half of it is covered by this picture. I guess that this picture is that place, maybe, but it sounds horrible, you know. Last 1 decade on the surface, well, that newspaper was like from like what, 5 years ago. Last 5 years on the surface now. Oh, pipes. Water-cooled interior uses little electricity. Well, that's great, I guess. It's fucking loud at night. Oh, okay, not good. Oh, self-sustained garden, local and fresh. Let's go. You know what? It won't budge. Okay. Well, maybe it's luck for instead. I guess no garden for me. This world is fucked. Yeah, I can agree. Yeah. Oh, let's see. Oh, is this a bathroom? Okay. This bathroom uses 100% recycled water. Oh, that's nice. I have a question. Why is it on top of the toilet? Does it mean everything's recycled? Like after you poop or pee, like does the water stinks? Oh, okay. Oh, that's not good. I mean, why is it showing shaving into the? Oh, okay. Okay. I guess using all this water isn't a good thing, or maybe you're doing this wrong because I'm just gonna leave the bathroom now. So okay. Powered manually, recharge your home anytime. Yeah, it's broken. I think it's broken. Yeah, it should be broken. Yeah, I mean, oh my God, what's going on with? Oh, okay. You know what? Clearly the person who lived down here wasn't in their best state. So I mean, I can understand. I mean, all of these just to be sustainable. I mean, it's not even welcoming. It's not even like a home. It's just, I mean, from the paper, it looks good. Don't get me wrong. It's good to be sustainable. It's good to recycle everything, but they're doing everything wrong, and you're in this box, and we have no idea what is outside of the box. I mean, how do they do all of that stuff? And I mean, the bathroom is just nasty. So, you know, I'm just gonna leave because I would rather stay on the surface than losing my mind. And you know, we built this kind of prison for ourselves because we fucked up the world and just I don't want to live there. So yeah, goodbye bunker house. So I guess hello world. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so this is our final round of questions, comments, concerns.
Please feel free to jump in on both projects. Yes, Sarah.
I have too many questions today. I have one question for Yichen. So great job, very great 3D animation and everything. And just, I kind of don't get the point of your project. Are you trying to say that sustainability is not gonna solve our problems, or it's better to get along with what we have? Like, can you make that clear? That what is your point behind this project?
Sorry, I was planning to say few things, but I didn't get to say it. So it's not because being sustainable isn't the way. It's just they're doing at the last minute. They are not being sustainable now. They are doing it when it's all flooded. Like something trails flooded, uninhabitable. They are just then doing the sustainable thing after that. So it's just too late for that. So we should have been sustainable a long time ago. So not just until the last minute when something terrible has happened. So it's basically it. And I want to show like a kind of contrast between what's on the surface and what's like behind the curtain. So yeah, hope that explains your question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Zara, for the question. Anyone else wants to offer a comment? Feedback? Yes.
I find it really interesting, the combination of your two presentations. I feel like they go really well together because, Yinshen, I found that what you presented really opened my eyes to, this isn't perfect, this isn't a utopia, we need to keep working and developing because otherwise it's going to end up like this, and that's bad. I don't think anyone wants to live in the bunker house. But I feel like having these two presentations next to each other really clarified that there is a middle path, and with constant development and kind of careful thought and consideration, it's possible to not end up in a bunker house. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Anyone else? Yes, Burku.
Thank you for your presentations. I have one question for each. First, Mahla, you have a very nice, very beneficial material that you use. What are your envisions to use it in other parts of urban design, urban space?
Thank you. For sure, I want to pursue this model and this process because I saw this bio-urban furniture as a circle to make improve to be more sustainable during the over the time. And for example, for using the material for the body, we can use the other material, for example, like woods for recycled and make the body. And the microalgae is very beneficial for urban actually. And so I want to pursue that, and I have some plan for that actually. And I think in my research background in research, I analyzed some costs for making this model. It's not really very expensive. Because this bio-urban furniture can be aesthetic, can be more aesthetic in urban sustainability at night and in the day. I think it's very useful for located in some public spaces because during the night this photosynthesis is continue, and besides the day, throughout the day. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. For Yin-chan, I love your project. I can't wait to live an existential crisis during the apocalypse. My question is, and I've been waiting for this question for a long time. Why did you choose blue pool mosaics in the shower?
Sorry, what's that?
Why did you choose to blue pool mosaics in the shower? Like, there are mosaics in the shower area. They are blue pool mosaics. Why did you choose them?
You mean
the tiles? Yeah, the tiles.
On the ground floor?
No, on the walls of the shower.
Okay.
Yeah, why did you choose those tiles? Like,
I just feel like they look like they belong in the shower. So.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, can I add another thing? Yes. As I mentioned that microalgae has this potential to be shine throughout the night, and it can give and it can charge from the solar energy. It would be very more useful for aesthetic in urban sustainability and public spaces. Yeah, so I really, for this potential, I really want to pursue this model, and maybe I proposed it to military and etc. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mela. Thank you.
I have a.
Yeah,
we have maybe a couple more questions. Katie May?
Yeah, I just have a question for you, Mala, concerning the microalgae, because I know you've been taking care of it for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if like your care for the algae and living with the algae has changed the way you think about designing with it.
Yeah. Well, in these 2 months, because this microalgae is growing into the nutritions, and nutritions are very important as an input material for microalgae. So I changed this nutrition and care about that. And actually, I put and preserve this microalgae sometimes into the fridge, and sometimes in front of the sun and in front of the window. And actually they're using some pumper to make the oxygen and the air throughout this glass that I preserved this microalgae. Yeah. And the one thing that you can find is your microalgae alive or not is that the microalgae become separate from the nutrients. And as you can see, this microalgae is throughout the flow throughout the nutrients, and so it's alive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yichen, your one of my favorite things about your what did you call it? It's not a game, it's a fiction, something fiction, digital fiction. Was all the little storytelling elements in it, and that's something from the last presentation that we didn't see. And I'm just wondering, like, what was your process of, because it's really like interesting, all the little drawings, and I'm just curious about what your process was behind your thoughts in doing all of that, because I think it has such a big impact on the overall digital fiction. So I'm just wondering what your...
So you mean just the drawing on the
yeah,
on the wall?
well, the drawings and also the posters and the rubbish bits lying around and...
Okay. So for the posters, I basically like trying to think like a corporation. Like even though its mission is to help people to survive, but it's still about like capitalism. Like it's still a corporation that only cares about its money. So I'm just trying to use those posters to show that the greed of the corporation and the the capitalism. And for the writing, I basically just wrote what I could think of, and I mean yeah, I mean I did put myself into the shoes of the person who lived here. So, but I basically just wrote down anything I could think of. So, yeah. Thank you.
I think there's a really interesting contrast and relationship between your two projects in the way that I feel like this digital fiction represents a more reactionary type of sustainability. Like you said, it feels very corporate and cold and not coming from a place of reciprocity and care that I see in Mala's presentation, where it's about that relationship with the algae and how we can live in relation with the algae and how it can help us, how we can help it, and things like that. Whereas in this fiction, I can see that very cold, profit focused kind of sustainability, and it's very different. And I think the projects presented together kind of shows that really well. So really cool work.
Thank you. Any other comment, question? No? If I can add to it, thank you so much for your two presentations. It's extremely interesting to see the progress your ideas and methods have made this semester. I have one question for each. Yishan, I'm curious. There is a, well, it's all speculative, but you created that kind of dystopian universe, which is where humans have withdrawn from. There's no more humans in the bunker house, or there may have, but they're like remnants. There are material traces, in fact. So, do you think that it could create a sense of empathy to bring back the player's agency a little bit more in that game, quote unquote, or to bring other characters? I'm just curious if it's something that you thought about, because we always say, okay, let's think about like the more human world, collaborations between non-humans and humans. But all those posters are dedicated to humans, and all those signs on the wall are signs for humans. So how do we augment this sense of awareness that you're trying to create, and perhaps this sense of empathy? Do you think it could be interesting to bring other characters in the game or not? I'm just curious about your perspective on that.
Okay. Well, there is actually a background story, but it's in the bunker house on the poster board. So there's a letter saying that everyone moved out. So it's basically saying that there's no one around. And about our other characters, I just feel like if I can create just one person's personality through the things in the bunker house, I think that will be I think as powerful as bring in an actual character to the game. And also for the motivation of the game protagonist or the player, it's I mean, now it seems that it just looks like the protagonist exit the apartment and goes to the bunker house and then leaves. So I think I could explore on more plot or stories like what's way before when you leave the apartment. So, so basically, I can just add in more stuff to complete the story, but still, so yeah, just a really short excerpt of the whole big story. So I've just put it in this very short digital fiction.
Thank you. And one question for you, Mala. I'm really curious because you, in your video, which was super, by the way, you designed for and let's just call this a universal unknown climate. I mean, we're near the sea, we're in like downtown, we don't know exactly where. And so you design your furniture to be this kind of not neutral, but neutral, quote unquote, in this somewhere. Okay. However, climate is also situated here in Montreal. We don't have the same climate than what's happening in the video. Okay. And I'm just curious because it poses question in terms of not necessarily applicability, but how could you reflect about your object embedding microalgae here? Okay, like what would you do if we had to use this speculative object and piece of furniture in a climate such as Canada? Because you can't just create like a piece of furniture with microalgae in January outside. That's it's just you know, it's the poor thing is not gonna survive, and it's also contradictory, but because this is probably when microalgae furniture would be like most needed, because there are no more leaves on the trees at that time. So this question of like how trees improve air quality and urban environment is more difficult in the winter. So I'm just curious, how would you adapt this idea to a local context?
Yeah. Honestly, at the first, I was searching about find a place in Montreal to locate this model in visual Lomion. I found and did lots of Google Map, but really I think because it's very important to at first we have a we have a scientific observation about the perfect location for that, so I couldn't find that. And actually about about the place and the weather climate, how can match this model with that climate is very important, yeah, really. So in this project, my focus was more about the design idea and about the exact microalgae, what potentials microalgae has, and what does potential microalgae have, and actually we can use from them in the urban to pursue the social dreaming and have a sustainable urban furniture. So it was my concern about that. And you know, about the weather, I just thinking about, and I saw and I read in some articles, we can use from some panels, some warming panels to protect the microalgae in the cold weather. For example, one project in Germany that was used from microalgae in some panels in front of the buildings. They use some warming panels to protect the microalgae, and so I actually I need some more time to research about that, but I'm sure about that. Microalgae has lots of potential. We can invite microalgae, and we can introduce microalgae as a plants in our environment, because microalgae is a living organism, and actually, you know, it's a 60 or 75%, it has a 60 or 75% photosynthesis, more than the trees and more than the other plants, and it's really, really important to invite this.
Perhaps something to think about would be the question of indoor air quality, because because if you go with, like, say, warming panels and stuff like that, it takes energy unless you go solar, and it's a whole process. But looking at the problematic of indoor air quality would be also interesting, because air quality inside is sometimes much worse than outside. So
yes, it's an interesting idea, because, for example, because we can use some more flexible container for preserve the microalgae, so we can have lots of more fantastic design indoor, and it's really interesting. Yeah, thank you. You, as always, you sparked my mind. Thank you.
And well, thank you both. Congratulations again. Yeah. Should I do a little closing remark, or you have prepared something?
I was just going to wing it, but I mean, you know, I opened the discussion with, you know, how this class opened more question than an answer. And I just want to kind of finish on a note that, like, you know, as much as it is up to individuals to change things, the term carbon footprint came from, you know, industrial complex, which blames the individual in terms of not blaming the system. So if we really want to move forward with these new futures and we want to open space for the modern humans, we have to think as a community, we have to expand the notion of community, and we have to hold powers and structures accountable for their actions and their due role in changing climate change and global futurities and the imagination that goes with that. So thank you so much for coming with us today, and I'm looking forward for seeing all these projects evolve. Alice, you want to say a couple things?
Yeah, I want to say a few things before I pass the mic to Anna that I see on the screen. Well, first I want to say congratulations to all the participants today, the presenters, the artists. I also want to say congratulations to all participants last week from the seminar. Critical Materiality is a special class. It encompasses three levels: undergrads, MDes, PhDs. Solidarity, cooperation is key in this class. It was a fantastic semester with all of you. And as a prof, we learn as much as our students every time. Your work is amazing. Keep up the good work. Keep asking critical questions. Thanks for this fantastic semester, and thanks to Anna and Doug and everyone at Fort Space for their generosity in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I won't keep you here longer, and I'm hiding in the office so we don't have feedback. So hopefully your ears aren't suffering in there now. But just, yeah, congratulations from all of us here at Fort Space. It's been an absolute pleasure. You all are wonderful and very inspirational to us here, and I'm sure those watching online as well. Thank you for joining us, folks over Zoom, folks on YouTube. And as a reminder, both of these walkthroughs have been live streamed and therefore recorded on the Concordia University Fourth Space YouTube channel. So do check them out for future reference. All right, everybody, have a great day.